With the significant changes that have occurred in the light of reactions to the global pandemic, one of them relates directly to the assessment of IB students worldwide. More specifically, for those taking music in the May 2021 cohort, the listening paper has been removed, and by implication, the Haydn and Rachmaninoff works that were slated for assessment then have similarly been scrapped. This means that the percentage distribution has been re-evaluated, giving greater significance to the musical links investigation, or MLI. For standard level students, the solo, group, or creating options selected will remain at 50% of the total. And for high-level students, these compulsory components will similarly remain as they have been at 25% each. Thus, this video offers a sample MLI to offer assistance to students and teachers to better prepare for this higher weighted compulsory component. Before we get into this sample, other changes have been implemented as well, including the length of the performance submissions and the number of pieces for the creating component. For this exploration, the student has chosen the musical cultures of Western art and Cuban song. It is important that students and teachers are viewing the MLI from the perspective of cultures rather than the pieces themselves. The MLI should of course be focused on analysis of pieces that represent the selected cultures, but one should always frame the investigation in these broader terms. Here, the student has selected Henry Purcell and the concluding aria from his most famous opera, and a son from Bueno Vista Social Club's 1997 eponymous album Chan Chan. The first link for exploration involves repetition. Obviously, repetition is an important element in music from a multitude of cultures, so it is important to illuminate how this is being used in this context, such that connections can be better made with the other selected culture. Here, the student explains, quote, "Repetition magnifies emotional intensity by reinforcing musical elements that are deeply emotional. In Dido's Lament, the chromatic bass line and chord progression are repeated throughout the piece. The repetition of these musical elements creates the melancholic mood of the aria and reinforces its emotional intensity." For the Cuban son, the student further explains, quote, "Correspondingly, the rhythmic ostinato in Chan Chan persists throughout the music. This two-bar polyrhythmic pattern suggests the Afro-Cuban origin, and along with fluctuations in tempo, collectively evokes passion." Countering this continual line of accented quavers and the son clave rhythm is a habanada rhythm in congas. As the music gradually accelerates, as observed in the recording, this reoccurring polyphonic and interweaving rhythmic ostinato reinforces the passion of the music and intensifies the emotional impact of the song. The student continues, quote, "Besides the ostinato bass that structurally drives the music forward and intensifies emotional impact, both pieces have recurring chord progressions that set the harmonic environment. The repetitious progressions maintain atmosphere and similarly reinforce emotional intensity. In Dido's Lament, the progression is based on the recurring lament bass and is thus highly repetitive. Although each 5-bar progression is slightly different, they mostly comprise of primary chords. However, the simplicity of the harmony puts emphasis on the chromaticism of the bass line, which contributes to emotional intensity. Moreover, the harmonic rhythm of the progression increases. The first chord lasts for 1 bar, and the 6 subsequent chords come in pairs of 2, in which the 2 chords of each pair last for 2 beats and 1 beat respectively. Lastly, the final 4 chords each last for 1 beat. Thus, the increase in harmonic pace intensifies the emotional impact of harmony together with the extensive chromaticism in the bass line. In Chan Chan, the chord progression reoccurs throughout the entire piece without variation. Similar to that of Dido's Lament, this progression shows a sense of accelerating harmonic pace, which creates a feeling of rushing forward, thus reinforcing emotional intensity. This characteristic is caused by syncopated harmonic rhythm, as we can see from the first chord, which lasts for 3 beats, whereas the second chord for 5. The harmonic pace then accelerates since chords 2 diminished and minor 4 each last for a dotted crotchet, although the final chord returns to a 5 crotchet length. However, note that chords 2 diminished and minor 4 may be interpreted as merely a chord minor 4, if the top E is considered a non-chordal tone. Nevertheless, the syncopated harmonic rhythm is reminiscent of the increasing harmonic pace in the progression of Dido's Lament, which to a similar effect reinforces and intensifies emotional impact. Furthermore, in Chan Chan, the major-minor juxtaposition of minor 1, major 3, minor 4, major 5-7 is reminiscent of major 5 minor 5 and major 4 minor 4 in Dido's Lament. In Chan Chan, there are precisely 2 major and 2 minor chords in the progression, excluding the diminished chord. The juxtaposition between major and minor creates an emotional turbulence, causing the mood to be neither joyous nor melancholic. Instead, such juxtaposition provides more complicated emotions, such as passion and desire, which ties in with the dance-like rhythmic ostinato of the piece. Similarly, in Dido's Lament, major and minor juxtaposition reinforces emotion. The alteration between major and minor exploits and emphasizes the chromaticism of the bass line. Also, unlike Chan Chan, minor chords occur more frequently in the progression of Dido's Lament. Thus, the major chords complement the minor chords, which intensifies the melancholia of the aria. Additionally, we can see that both pieces feature a diminished chord 2 before the cadence in the progression. This similarity shows how both composers utilize a diminished chord to magnify the emotional impact of the harmony immediately before the cadence. This also allows for a greater sense of relief in the cadence, which then allows further build-up of emotional intensity as the progression repeats its next cycle. Again, in the words of the student, quote, "In Dido's Lament, Purcell makes use of word painting to put emphasis on the text. The word laid is set to a descending melodic figure, thus putting emphasis on the meaning of the word and the death imagery that it evokes. Also, the pianto motive is used 2 times within the melismatic laid, and several times within this melodic phrase, further reinforcing the idea of death. Furthermore, the dotted rhythm creates a feeling of being short of breath, and possibly suggesting sobbing, which again suitably coincides with the lyrics and emphasis of Dido's despair. In Chan Chan, the regularity of the melodic phrases puts emphasis on the text in a similar way that word painting does in Dido's Lament. There seems to be only one melodic idea in the entire piece, and all melodic phrases are variations of this main melodic idea. Since the lyrics of Chan Chan are of a storytelling nature, unlike that of Dido's Lament, the repetitive melodic phrases in Chan Chan draw the listener's attention to the story in the lyrics, achieving an effective setting of such text. Moreover, the subsequent variations of the main melodic line are mostly based on its rhythmic framework, thus putting emphasis on the polyrhythmic ostinato, which directly relates to the lyrics about passion and desire. Further, quote, Dido's Lament, the thin texture of voice, 2 violin parts, violas and basso continuo, evokes the loneliness and helplessness of Dido in her final mournful song. The strings and basso continuo play a rhythmically regular chordal accompaniment with occurrences of the pianto motif, echoing the voice, thus putting emphasis on the soloist entirely and creating an atmosphere of desolation and despair. Similarly, the polyrhythmic texture of Chan Chan evokes a passionate mood that suits the lyrics about passion and desire. As aforementioned, the son clave and the habanera rhythm interweave in polyphony, and together with the syncopated and rhythmically rich melodic lines in the voice, give the music an energetic vibe. Moreover, the main melodic lines are accompanied mostly in parallel sixths and thirds, and such enrichment in texture also contributes to the vibrancy of the piece and ties in with the theme of desire and lust. Furthermore, the aforementioned major-minor juxtaposition in the progression of Dido's Lament relates to the theme of love and death in the lyrics and in the context of the opera. Such alternation of major and minor harmony emphasizes the emotional duality of Dido at the moment of embracing death, that death is an act of both despair and love. However, the major-minor juxtaposition in the progression of Chan Chan has a different effect. While the piece is in a minor tonality, the mood is passionate and by no means melancholic. This can be attributed to the major-minor alternation previously shown, which together with the polyrhythmic texture gives the music a dance-like energetic vibe by de-emphasizing its minor tonality, achieving an effective setting of a storytelling text that has to do with love and desire. The student concludes, quote, It seems apparent that Purcell's Dido's Lament, an aria from a Baroque opera, has numerous exceptional connections with Compe Seguano's Chan Chan, a Cuban song. Whether or not one can categorically state that these two cultures are connected is unknown. However, we could say that both composers make use of extensive repetition of musical elements, such as an ostinato bass and harmonic progression, to intensify the emotional impact of their music, as well as utilizing melody, texture, and harmony to effectively set text to music. Unquote. I hope that you have found this investigation useful and that in your own investigations you can successfully manage to highlight significant connections that bring cultures together.
Llegó a